Okay, so just like, sorry, I figured we were probably close to 5 minutes on the last one. Why do we see, you think, so many? About half of both of them.
Probably just because you just see head, tail. I mean, you're flipping 20 coins, so seeing both of them isn't really that improbable, I guess.
Okay. What of these numbers surprises you the most?
I guess the variation between the heads and the tails. Like, tails is like 15 times more likely. The head, tail.
Yeah, something like that, right. So it's the tails only all by itself is much more likely, like 10 to 15 times more likely than the heads only. So which one surprises you of those two numbers?
Well, it's the heads. Heads is so small.
Okay, so why? Let's talk about that. Do you have any guess as to why heads only is so small?
Well, to get all 4 heads in a row, like just from a randomly if like you randomly select 4 out of the 20 and they're all heads. But if you randomly select 4 out of the 20 and it's head, tails, it should be the same probability.
Okay.
But I guess that it has something to do with the fact that we're taking the entire 20.
Yep, it does. So something makes heads only with no tails run very unlikely to happen. Can you think what could cause that to be so unlikely? Both we see a lot. Heads all by itself is pretty rare. So only having a head is pretty rare. With no tail. Why? Is there something that makes that unlikely? That's kind of the key to understanding what's going on here.
Well, roughly in our 20, we should see 10 heads, 10 tails.
Right, okay. Yeah.
I guess 4 of the heads grouped together is unlikely, maybe? Guess not. I don't know.
Well, it's not that unlikely, remember, because we saw both of them a lot. So the 4 heads occurs about half the time. But it seems the head seems to occur with the tail run. Something makes that happen.
I guess the difference between 4 heads occurring in a row and 5 heads occurring in a row is different. But I guess that's not what we're seeing. Like, we could see them. Maybe they could be completely separate in the 20.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's because we're not seeing the tails. Maybe that's the reason.
What do you mean we're not seeing the tails?
Like, we're for just the heads, we don't see this combination.
Okay, so when we have a sequence of 4 heads in a row,
because that forces the 5th one to be heads. Which then forces all the rest of them to be heads.
So what should one with heads only look like?
Well, you're gonna have something. You've like you just go randomly until you get 4 heads in a row, and the rest have to be heads.
Okay, so let's take a look at that. So we can code that up really quickly, but we don't want to do it with 100,000. I'll do it with I'll go back to doing it with 10 because we'll probably see it. And then if we hit this one, we'll print out where it came from. So what is that one? Heads only? Heads is greater than 0. That, okay, and sorry, tripping around my tripod is a little tricky. We didn't see any heads only, of course. Alright. 10, I made it too small because it was only 2% of the time, right? Alright, so let's do it with 100. There we go. So here are the ones where we saw heads only, and what happened?
You just go, you like head, it's tail, head, tail, it just goes randomly, and then you hit all the heads.
You hit all the heads at the end.
But it's not, these were right at the end, so it's not
right.
Not that unlikely.
But why does that have to happen if you get heads only? Why does it have to happen at the end?
Well, because I guess if it happens like here, the probability of the other 15 or so spaces being all heads is very, very unlikely.
Okay, yeah. So here we go. Here's another one.
So we just get them right at the end.
You get them at the end, but they're forced to be at the end. Why are they forced to be at the end?
Well, this one's perfectly fine. You can have 5 heads
Yeah, but it still happened at the end.
because it's so unlikely.
No, there's a reason. There's a reason it has to happen at the end. So these are the ones where we only saw heads.
Yes.
The only run of 4 heads, but it had to happen at the end, and there's a reason.
Well, there do have to be 4 heads at the end.
Yeah, but why does it have to be at the end?
Well, it doesn't. Like it could start here, and the rest of these could be heads. That's just more unlikely to happen.
Okay, you're right, but that would still be at the end. So why does that have to happen at the end?
Don't understand. It has to start somewhere and has to go all the way to the end.
Okay, right. Why?
Because if you have a single tail in there, it breaks.
We would end up with a head, tail. Yeah. So cool. All right. So neat. It's a neat problem, huh? Mm-hmm. And well, actually, let's go back to the whiteboard and see if you can explain, after seeing some of the data, why there's more head, tail runs. Because it's still pretty tricky to explain that.